Carson Wentz will try to become the 5th rookie QB since the merger to start and win his team's first 2 games of the season tonight when he takes on Stephen A's fave, Jay Cutler, and the Bears. Stephen A., who are you trusting more this evening, Wentz or Cutler?
Well, I'm trusting Wentz. I mean, I know that Jay Cutler is the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. I mean, is that a trick question? You're going to ask the word trust. I'll be damned if I'm going to trust Jay Cutler, not to mention the fact that I'm not going to have to because Chicago's going to try to get their running game going because Jeremy Langford only registered 57 yards and 17 carries in week 1 against Houston. You've got pressure coming from the edges in Graham and Barwin. We'll see what the Eagles do in terms of getting to Jay Cutler because he was sacked 5 times against Houston. The Eagles don't have that kind of pressure. But in the end, I think that Carson Wentz is a bit more legitimate than the Bears might think right now, even though Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator for Chicago, was very praiseworthy of him. I think it comes down to Carson Wentz and what that offense can do with Matthews and the crew and Sproles. I think he'll be utilized. I think the Eagles win this game 27-23.
I think the Bears win. They need it more. The Eagles might be looser because they're kind of playing with house money at this point. The Bears are more desperate at home. They really need a win. And it's not like it's the NFC Championship game, Stephen A. I mean, Cutler's been a solid regular season quarterback. And by the way, has Wentz passed the eyeball test early in his career, 1 game? Yes, absolutely. So did Cutler. I mean, Cutler, once upon a time, passed the eyeball test. To say you trust him, you need to see more. Well, I'm saying you're using the eyeball test. You need to see more than 1 game to say you trust the guy, even if you don't trust Cutler. This ain't a playoff game. If it was the playoffs, I could see where you say maybe you don't trust Cutler because of what you've seen in the past. But in the regular season, you could do worse than Jay Cutler. He's been a solid kind of middle-of-the-pack NFL quarterback for most of his career in the regular season. Let's be honest about it.
Stephen A.
I'm being very honest. No, I don't believe in Jay Cutler.
Stephen A., I got
and
something
he's got
for
better
you.
offensive weapons. Alshon Jeffrey's got more weapons.
Stephen A., I got something for you real quick. Check this out. This was yesterday at the Cowboys-Redskins game in Washington. Wizards guard John Wall rocking the Cowboys jersey in front of Washington fans. How do you feel about that?
I think John Wall's trying to get traded. We've heard stories about his relationship with Bradley Beal. Ernie Grunfeld and those guys definitely got to upgrade in terms of getting him a better supporting cast. He's being Bradley Beal is being paid, damn near $40 million more than John Wall right now. I think this is him saying, I want to get the hell out. The man is from Raleigh, North Carolina. What are you wearing a Cowboys jersey to the game at FedEx Field for?
He bought into that America's team nonsense.
He said, get me the hell out of here. That's why he did that yesterday.
Where's he going?
I don't even understand why y'all are asking me this question. It's a complete waste of time. I think y'all should be embarrassed for picking anybody other than Seattle. Who are they playing? The Legion of Boom against Case Keenum. I got Seattle only because and simply because they're playing Jeff Fisher's Rams. That's it. I don't need any other. I mean, let me look into the camera and say this to the Seattle Seahawks. Let me guarantee y'all why they're going to win. I'm going to look the Seattle Seahawks in the camera and say this. Y'all going to go to Los Angeles and lose to Case Keenum and Jeff Fisher. Really?
Oh, Stephen A. so confident, but his pep talk didn't really work. It's been a shaky start for Seattle's offense after barely beating the Dolphins at home in Week 1. The Seahawks put up 3 points in a loss to the Rams Sunday. Seattle racked up 10 penalties. For 114 yards, Russell Wilson sacked twice. The Rams' defensive line has now sacked Wilson 18 times in the past 5 meetings. We now welcome Ryan Clark back. You enjoyed that little video earlier.
It was pretty good.
That was nice. But, Stephen A., we got to start with you after that. They were your lock of the week, Stephen A. Come on. In our Eliminator Challenge, have the Seahawks...
Eliminated.
Give me my camera for this. Have the Seahawks lost their mystique?
Well, first of all, I didn't want to participate in an eliminated challenge anyway, so the hell with it.
You played
happy
like
I'm
it.
going, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, let me say this. Wow. The Seahawks should be ashamed of themselves, but not their defense. Legion of Boom showed up. Todd Gurley didn't even average 3 yards a carry, okay? They didn't do anything offensively. It was Seattle's offense that was deplorable. It was their offense that didn't show up. Now, granted, Russell Wilson was hurt. They say that his ankle was swollen really, really bad leading up to yesterday's festivities. There's no denying that. We understand that. And because of it, his ability to scramble wasn't there. that not only assisted in him being sacked 2 times, even though, like you said, he's been sacked 18 times in the previous 5 games, and they've lost 4 of the last 5 meetings against Jeff Fisher and his Rams. But the bottom line is that when he can't scramble, he just has to stand in the pocket and throw the football. And the weapons that he has, whether it's Lockett, Graham, or whomever, they're not going to help you. Seattle's offensive line is highly suspect. They haven't been the same since they acquired Graham for Unger, who got an extension in New Orleans, by the way. And this kid, Graham, he wants to catch, but he doesn't want to block. So you're depleted as an offensive line, which means you're depleted in your ability to protect Russell Wilson. Combine that with his suspect ankle and the receivers that you have who are good, but there's no all-pros hanging out everywhere. I like Baldwin. I like Lockett and those guys. They're not scrubs. They can play. But let's face reality. When we're talking about elite receivers in this game, they're not the names that come up. They're respected, but they're not the names that come up when you're talking elite. And so when we look at it from that perspective, beast mode is gone. Christian Michael, even though he averaged 6 yards a carry, they weren't running the ball as much as they should have. I'm just looking at it from the perspective that offensively, and it starts with that offensive line and their inability to protect Wilson, combined with Wilson not being healthy, it was a recipe for disaster, and it showed itself by them scoring 3 points. I just refused to pick Los Angeles because one of the most disgusting things for me to have witnessed yesterday was Jeff Fisher running off the field, raising his hand in the air like he's a champion, he's accomplished something. I was at an event for the Los Angeles Rams in Beverly Hills on Saturday night, guys, and I ran across some guys that were a lot of fun, a lot of great guys within the Rams organization, arguing with me about their team winning this game. I said, there's no way in hell. I got interviewed by ESPN 710 LA at their tailgate party before the game yesterday, which I was at, okay? And I was telling the crowd there was no way in hell Seattle was going to lose this game. All because of Jeff Fisher. And Jeff Fisher gets to walk off the field like he's accomplished something, and it glosses over the fact that entering his 22nd season as an NFL head coach, he's only been to the playoffs 6 times. It was disgusting. It was nauseating. Made me want to throw up. But these are the things that happen over the course of a full NFL regular season. I got to take my comeuppance. I understand, but it was by default. Russell Wilson wasn't healthy.
Rams have played the Seahawks very tough in recent years. Since 2014, they've beaten them 4 times. No other team
we know that.
has beaten Seattle more than 1 time in the regular season over that span. They beat them twice last year. They just match up well. And going into this game, first game in L.A. in 22 years, they're going to be amped up to play them. And Seattle started slowly last year, 0-2. Then they wound up 2-4 after 6 games. Don't forget, they wound up winning a playoff game last year. So this is the kind of philosophy in Seattle seems to be, look, and I'm very pro-offensive line. Spend your resources on your offensive line. But that's not the only way to get the job done. And if you look at the success that front office and Pete Carroll have had in recent years, it's tough to second-guess them. Their philosophy seems to be that in a league with finite resources, there's a cap. That means you have to decide where you're going to spend your resources. Seattle doesn't seem to spend it on the offensive line. You mentioned the Unger trade for Jimmy Graham, who hasn't exactly balled since he's been in Seattle. They seem to be of the belief, Seattle, and maybe for good reason, you don't need to spend a lot of resources there, that if you get good enough players throughout the season, through coaching, through playing together, through experience, they can gel as a unit and become greater than the sum of their parts. And who's to say that they're wrong? Because they've had great success, kind of, it seems at least, following that philosophy in recent years. But it does mean in the beginning that the offensive line is the area on the field, the positions at which playing together does make a difference. And that suggests that if the coaching is good, if the guys can play together, they could, I'm not saying they will, but they could improve over the course of the season. It happened last year. Certainly with a hurt Russell Wilson early in the year against a motivated team that seems to have your number, that hasn't played in L.A. in 22 years. You're on the road. Your quarterback's hurt. Something like this can happen. You're not going to win every game. I wouldn't panic if I was a Seattle fan, but I wouldn't say that this is the most shocking result in the world either.
Well, I think you guys have talked a long time, and, they tell us in our ear, how long we have. So I'm going to have to make this really quick and really easy for you because you guys are just so intelligent And I know you guys will understand this. The question is, has Seattle lost their mystique? It didn't take me until this week to say they lost their mystique. They lost their mystique, and you both have mentioned this trade, but you haven't mentioned why it was such a bad trade. It's not a bad trade because Max Unger got an extension in New Orleans or because Jimmy Graham was hurt last year and hasn't quite made the plays in Seattle that we expected him to make or that Pete Carroll and John Snyder expected him to make. They lost their mystique because they lost themselves. They lost their identity. This team was, we're going to hit you in the mouth, we're going to run downhill, we're going to play physical defense, going to turn the ball over, pressure your quarterback, get interceptions, and at the end of the day, we are going to wear you out physically. Well, if I'm sitting on the other side, if I'm the Los Angeles Rams, if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, and I see, oh, you go out and get Jimmy. Oh, that means you want to throw it. You want to spread it out. You obviously don't want a tight end that's going to block and help you in the running game. You have lost yourself. And that's what happened to Seattle. They lost themselves. And in losing themselves, they are now losing games. You are now putting your quarterback under immense pressure. They started 2-4 last year, like Max mentioned, but they started 2-4 because they couldn't block people. And if you look at the first 2 games of the season, up front, they were dominated by Miami. Yesterday, they were dominated by the Los Angeles Rams. And to your point, Max, the last 3, the Rams have won. They match up extremely well because the Rams are built physical up front. Seattle is not any longer. You reach for an O-lineman in the first round because you're desperate. That guy isn't even playing right now. So you lost your mystique when you forgot who you were, when you wanted to be pretty instead of being sound, when you wanted to look luxurious instead of...
Well, Ryan Clark, first of all, you talk just as long as us. Incriminate yourself, please. Thank you very much.
I don't know about
Secondly, no, stop it, Molly. Just stop it, okay? Secondly, Ryan, I think it's important to recognize that you bringing up Max Unger. Very, very valid point. Very astute in your analysis. Let's not forget beast mode. Because as much as we liked Rawls and as much as we might like Christian Michael, beast mode was beast mode. That was their identity as well. Maybe you should get him to come out of retirement. I'm just saying.
But by the way, in the modern NFL, too, losing a center is not what it was once upon a time. It's more important than ever nowadays, and that's a big loss for them to take. But I think the Jimmy Graham trade at the time, Ryan Clark, reflected the fact that they didn't know exactly what they had in Doug Baldwin, or at least what he was going to develop into, and they wanted some kind of a greater or an increased threat in the passing game. I wonder if they knew the kind of player they had in Doug Baldwin, maybe they did, or maybe he really has improved like this and it's not just a matter of increased opportunity. I wonder if they make that trade again. I don't know.
It's not necessarily about the production you've seen from the guys. It's about identity. It's about who you want to be. And the physicality in which they played with on both sides of the ball was their identity. And that changes immediately when you change the piece. No matter how you coach him, no matter what you teach him, what technique, you can't teach a guy to be tough. You can't. Tackling and blocking and physicality are 90% want to. I cannot make you want to go. Like Mike T would always say, I'd rather say whoa than sick him. You can't make him go eat. He got to want to eat himself. And when you change that piece, you change your identity, and the mystique goes.
Ryan Clark breaking it down for us. You will stay with us. Coming up next.